My name is Colleen Tyson. I'm an outreach and engagement librarian at the University of Iowa Special Collections. So outreach and engagement means that I work on event planning, I work with our exhibition program, I work on coordinating social media to communicate with our online communities, and I do some work on marketing. The word book changed for me the very first time that I got to hold a medieval manuscript. Every book that I read growing up was a paperback. We didn't have a lot of money. I mean, I checked out books from the library, so it was either a library book or a paperback. But when I held this thing that took, decades to make, that involved an entire community of people to contribute to all of those different parts over generations to make this one single book, that really changed the definition of book for me. Oh, asking about favorites is a cruel, cruel request. I guess I would answer Margarita Philosophica. That's a book from 1501, and what I like about it is it was one of the first attempts to make an encyclopedia. So they tried to look at the world, define it, and write about all human knowledge in one book. In some ways, what I tell visitors when they come here is that they're not as special as everyone thinks. One of the things about a book, even a book that's hundreds of years old, is that it's meant to be read. What I see, what's involved in sort of the white glove phenomenon, people picture rare books as being this thing that you have to treat as a majestic object. And in lots of cases, they are really expensive and they are really fragile. But at the same time, if we don't read them, they're not serving a purpose. They're just a glorified, ritual object. And they're meant to be read. So in some ways, what I tell people about books is that they are special, but not as special as you're thinking. Go ahead, sit down, turn the pages, touch the book. That's what it's here for.
Hi, my name is Lori Branch, and I'm an associate professor of English here at the University of Iowa. My position's technically in restoration and 18th century British literature, but I also teach post-secular studies, so religion, literature, secularism, theology, and children's literature is also a large interest of mine. Of all the novels I have that I love, from children's literature all the way through Jane Austen and Charles Dickens, I really thought the place that I had to begin was with the Bible. So I was raised in a pretty devout home, and with a lot of close reading of this marvelous book, which is really a library full of books, full of mythology, narrative, history, prophecy, poetry, prayer. It's such a wonderful book, and what I gleaned from my religious upbringing was this enormous attention to the detail of the text. The joy of reading and the responsibility of reading carefully and well was something that that religious upbringing of my original family that is still with me today, certainly, as an English professor, and is probably a part responsible for it. I mean, there are many other favorite books. The book that probably had the most to do with my conversion from being at that point, I think I was a physics and math major, to English, was studying T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, actually, but in British Literature Survey class. This is my volume of T.S. Eliot. But it wasn't, I love The Wasteland. The big revelation of The Wasteland to me was that here was poetry that was so inscrutable and difficult that you couldn't make sense of it unless you asked it the right questions. And I also got out my ragged, much marked, much loved, parts of it even memorized, copy of the major works of William Wordsworth. So Wordsworth also really dear to me. So I began my life as a reader with this very, in a way, kind of simple but athletic and straightforward sense of engaging the text, letting the text speak to you, trying to understand what the text says. Of course, as I got older, I learned to just enjoy texts more on their own. But then as I went to graduate school, one isn't schooled in the appreciation of beauty so much, not these days. In graduate school, one more, alas, murders to dissect. So it's an analyzing text to surface what is unsaid in them. And that may seem harsh, and it's probably is a little bit harsh and maybe slightly unfair, but not terribly unfair. So then as I've gotten older, been in the profession longer. I've been a professor for 15 years, and I was in graduate school for about 8 years before that. I've done a lot of critical thinking about the varieties of reading, what are the shortcomings of what we call critical reading, and what the meaning of literary pleasure is. That's kind of a long journey. It's a more complex place. What's interesting to me is that none of the ways of reading that I've kind of progressed through in my life have been completely left behind. What I'm at now is a kind of synthesis of definitely a hearty dose of that sense of responsibility and integrity to the text, and definitely some critical reading and an awareness of a text's blind spots, but a much more open idea of the real pleasures of reading and how the human pleasure of reading can be a good and beautiful thing.